that, board, I am asking that we direct our attention to item number 7, discussion of letter from TEA regarding financial audit. And I am going to ask Deanna, am I going to bring you on so that you can, Mr. Chambers?
Yes, ma'am. It'll be myself. Obviously, Deanna and Charles can serve and provide any background, but
excuse me, Mr. Chambers and
yes.
and Ms. Williams. I just noticed that Natasha Butler had exited the meeting. And since she's one who brought that letter ahead, I would like to see her be in this meeting. I don't know if she's having some issues there, or if we can just go to the next one and come back if she joins us. Because I really would like to see her part of this, especially if we have discussion. But I don't know. It's up to you. You're the president, so yeah. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, even if she does not, Trustee Moreno, even if she does not, this information is recorded for a later discussion. This is more of, we wanted an opportunity for, to get clarification. And I know even though she brought it up, the board member asked that we put it, it wasn't her that asked that we put it on the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and proceed forward.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you for that observation, and we'll make sure that Trustee Butler will review this information as the public who heard the information during the last board meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. As you mentioned, during the last board meeting, when the board was considering a recommendation for our external auditor, Ms. Butler did bring up a concern, or a letter that she felt was a concern, and we really weren't prepared to be able to discuss that. So the board did ask that we include this as an agenda item so that we can clarify for the board and the community exactly what that letter was, perhaps more importantly what it is not, and just to clarify for everyone's sake. I've asked Mr. Woods and Ms. Wentz to reach out to Whitley Penn and Mr. Lupe Garcia. Many of you are familiar with Mr. Garcia. He has presented in front of this board before. But just before I turn it over to Mr. Garcia, just a little background. The board did consider, and I know Ms. Williams, Ms. Key, and Ms. Butler should remember, I know it's been a while, but this letter and the content of this letter and the purpose of this letter was discussed with our audit committee in January, during the January 15th, 2019 audit committee meeting prior to the board meeting. And our minutes reflect that Ms. Williams, you were there, Ms. Key was there, and Mrs. Butler was in that meeting where this discussion was, this issue was discussed extensively. I'll let Mr. Garcia explain what the issue is, but it was discussed extensively and voted on by, and during the actual board meeting, the motion was made by, and the second was made by Ms. Butler and by Ms. Key. So we just wanted to let the board, remind the board, I know that was a long time ago, a lot of things have happened, but this is an issue that was discussed with the board and in the committee, both in the committee meeting and in the board meeting. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Garcia with Whitley Penn and let him share with you.
Before you do that, Mr. Chambers, I just wanted to note to the board again that this is only a discussion. This is not an item in which action will be taken. This is for information and clarity. So you're free to ask the questions. As Mr. Chambers stated, this was thoroughly discussed. We do have the minutes. The board has approved those minutes also, that those actions were taken. So there are no actions on this item, only an opportunity to bring clarification of a matter that was brought before the public and before the board. So thank you, Mr. Chambers, for reminding us of the information, but I wanted the board to be conscious that this is not a typical item in which we are going to take further action. Action has already been taken. Thank you.
This is for your information only. So Mr. Garcia, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Chambers, thank you for the opportunity to provide some background on this letter from 2019 related to the district's fiscal year 2018 financial statements. The Financial Compliance Division of the Texas Education Agency They review every school district's annual financial and compliance report, and they issue a letter like this in the months subsequent to the district submitting it to the Texas Education Agency. During fiscal year 2018, the school district implemented a new accounting standard related to its other post-employment benefits through a TMRS, and those are retiree benefits related to healthcare. So to implement that particular accounting standard, the district had to restate beginning net position, and it had to record for the first time a net OPEB liability that was very significant, and that's why we pointed it out in the audit committee meeting. Since that year, the district has reported a deficit net position due to the implementation of this standard. This by no means means that the financial statements were misstated or that there was something that needed to be corrected by the district. The district did exactly what it was supposed to do. It presented its financial statements correctly and fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Because this is a significant liability that has to be reported in the district's financial statements, the TEA and the Financial Compliance Division, they note this in the letter that goes to the superintendent, that goes to the board president, that goes to management, that goes to Whitley Penn as the external auditors, just to highlight the significance of that amount, and that this is something that they're keeping an eye on. However, this is something out of the district's control. This liability is managed by TRS, the Teachers Retirement System of Texas. The district continues to budget and contribute to TRS exactly like it's supposed to. This liability, this balance that creates this deficit net position in the district's financial statements is calculated every year. It's audited by auditors at the plan level. There's actuaries that take information provided by the district to calculate the district's proportionate share of the liability. And the district is doing exactly what it's supposed to do in accounting and reporting for this other post-employment benefit liability, just like it does its pension liability that was related to a prior implementation. But by no means does the comment in the letter represent that the district made any type of error or mistake in reporting its balance in the statement of net position. So if there are any questions about the letter or the comment that they made in the letter, I'd be happy to take those questions at this time.
Board, let me state at this time that Ms. Butler has dialed back in. I do believe, Gerard, I'm going to confirm the phone number in which we see is Ms. Butler, who's on the call at this time. So I want to make everyone aware that all board members are present. Board, are there any specific questions that you would like clarification from Mr. Garcia in the statement that he made?
A question. Can you hear me, Madam President? This is Trustee Natasha Butler.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. Full board, I apologize. I called in using my phone, so please bear with me if it's a little bit choppy. So, Mr. Garcia, I read the letter and I understand that the net position is still positive, right? And so I understand that the comment that's written in the letter is stating that per gap changes that occurred, right? That that the pension disclosure amounts, right, will let it in a debt unrestricted position, right? Even though it actually wasn't a deficit, it actually turned out being a positive net position. Is that correct?
The unrestricted net position is negative, is a deficit. That's correct. Correct.
And so the TEA comment was stating that this is from my understanding that this is a common mistake as it related to that this change happened from gap accounting procedures for 68 and 75, where the districts were required to account for the net pension liability, right, and the OPEB, right, and that it didn't get disclosed properly on the net position. Am I understanding that correctly? That it was.
That is not a correct statement. There was no mistake made. There was no correction that the district had to make. 2018 was the fiscal year when the district and all local governments in the United States had to account and report for this liability for the very first time. So this was brand new to financial statements for local governments, including school districts in Texas. So there was no mistake, there was no correction. This was the very first fiscal year the district had to report this particular balance in this manner. So that's why there had to be a prior period restatement, because liability had to be brought onto the face of the financial statements for the very first time. So there was no mistake, there was no correction that was made. The district implemented and presented everything correctly.
So, so then why the comment then? Because it's stating that, you know, it's stating that it was, you know, required a period of adjustment. You know, furthermore, it's as a result of recognizing it. So you're basically saying that this is something that was brand new, right? This is what happened, right? So in your audit report, when you give it to us as a district, right, as a school board trustee and present to us, how come this wasn't put in the statement correctly on Exhibit A, page 27? That's what I'm asking.
It was presented correctly. That's what I'm saying. This comment is not stating that anything was presented incorrectly. This is exactly what TEA's letter includes for every school district in the state of Texas that implemented GASB statement number 75 that now reports a negative unrestricted net position due to this liability. They include this comment in the letter every single year. So it was in the letter 2019, it was in the letter 2020, and it's in the letters again this year in 2021. They're merely pointing out where we know that this balance is negative, and this is why, due to the implementation back in 2018 of GASB statement number 75, and they're merely pointing out these are the balances, and this is something that we're keeping an eye on, but that does not mean that this is a mistake or anything was done incorrectly.
Okay. And so then okay, thank you for that clarification. And then so for number 2 on the letter, where it says a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, right, was listed as NA instead of by the identifying number. So in your audit report that was presented, it states that it's okay to use the NA, but TEA is clearly saying that it should have been identified by the number or the entity instead. So was it just a sense of, from you as an auditor, that it's okay to use the NA, and then TEA is going back and saying, no, well, we prefer that you do this? Or was this a situation where it should have been listed this way?
The grant that you're referring to was passed through CDBG, which is a housing and urban development program, and then passed through the city of Houston. So the Texas Education Agency actually played no part in the funds that this grant was related to. So the fact that there was a not applicable for that pass-through identifying number means that the city of Houston did not assign any particular number to that. If this was truly a matter where something was presented incorrectly in regards to the pass-through identifying number, then it would be the city of Houston that would be contacting Alief ISD saying that there was a mistake. The TEA reviewed it, and so that stands out to them, because typically you would think there would be an actual number there, some identifying number to the contract or to that grant. But if there were one, it would have been presented. And because there wasn't a number, the district used not applicable because it did not exist.
So even though the letter says that the identifying number is assigned by the pass-through entity as required, you're stating that TEA is not saying that there's an issue with that in the sense of the district did anything wrong, more like the city of Houston didn't supply the number to Alief ISD. Am I understanding that correctly? That's what you're stating?
The city of Houston did not assign a number, so there was no number to disclose there. So that's why the district indicated by the NA that there was nothing to put in that particular column for that particular grant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam President, those are all my questions.
Thank you, Trustee Butler. Is there any other board member who have a question regarding this particular item?
Comment and not a question. I was present at the audit meeting before the board meeting when all of the audit findings and reports were made. And I think January of 2019, is that when it was? And I clearly remember that this item was discussed because it was new, and all of what you just said and restated was stated at that time. And I believe I was present, Ann Williams was present, and Miss Butler was present. So this is the second time we're hearing this. Thank you for bringing it back to us.
Are there any other comments from a board member on this item before we move on?
Ms. Williams, this is Rick Moreno. Just have a question. I was not part of that meeting in January that Ms. Key just mentioned. Was there discussion? Was there any questions brought up by the board members? With Natasha Butler being an accountant or having an accounting background, was any of those questions brought up then, or was it just held over until, 4 months later when we have, our meeting, or 3 months later in our meeting? Maybe one of y'all can answer a question. It doesn't necessarily have to be you, Ms. Williams. It could be Ms. Key or even Natasha Butler, because I'm just saying she has real specific questions, and I'm just wondering if that was brought up in the, in that part with Mr. Garcia. So that was just my question.
Answer that question.
Yes, answer. You may answer if you like.
Yes. So Trustee Moreno, so I did not ask that question, and here is the reason why. So when we went and reviewed the CAFR report per the audit, this was mentioned, right, that there was this change that was happening, that happened, and that was in January of 2019, right? And so this letter came out in July. So the letter came out after we had already seen that. So no, I did not ask the question. And as I was looking at that, it was presented in the CAFR report about that there was a new process, and it's on page, I think, 13 in exhibit K1 or K2, where it actually talks about that happening in the CAFR report. That is correct. And I did not bring that to a question because I did not have ample time to do the research based on when we got the CAFR report, right, approved it, and then the audit happened afterwards. And so you are correct, sir. I did not bring that question to the table, nor did I bring up the question of the scheduled expenditures, because that I would, again, I have not had enough time to read this 900-page document and done some research to ensure or to be able to verify that. So I did not, and I will admit that publicly, that I did not do that. But given that we were given this document on a Thursday before Tuesday board meeting, I did not have time to do all of the research as needed. And then I did more research over a period of time. And as this audit, as we were choosing a vendor, right, was when I started looking at all of the pieces together collectively, sir.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the answer.
Ms. Williams, just a quick comment to that. I'd like to remind the board that it's the responsibility of me and my staff to review those things in detail and bring those to the board as a recommendation. I'd like for you, for the board, just to be aware and be cognizant of the role of our staff and our partnership and relationship with in this case Whitley Penn. That's my job. And if there's a problem or a concern that's researched, I would expect that to come to me so that I can get that resolved. That is our responsibility. It's not the board's responsibility. Just want to clarify where this line is.
I understand, Mr. Chair. As a board chair and longtime board, we make us conscious of the thought that boards across the state of Texas, and I do have attorneys on with me who work with various school districts, boards across the state of Texas have opportunity to review documentation beforehand through a specific process. And yes, I know new board members, and I was one of the new board members who received a 1,000-page document and was not aware. But as time go along, we are aware that we receive the information and are to review it within a window of time. And as far as for doing specific research and background, as a board member, we are 30,000 foot up. We are in governance seat. When it comes down to research, the individuals who supply those information, they've done the research, and we should establish a wonderful relationship with them, a working relationship, professional relationship with them, to trust and ask if there is something we do not understand, to always email them, notify your board president if you need some clarity, notify Mr. Chambers, but we are always here. Even our attorneys are available on some of the items that you might need clarification on. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come back and to revisit this, and not only that, to understand our processes and our role as board members. I mean, we have a commitment. Fiduciary responsibility also includes being able to obtain the material and to read it as thoroughly as possible and ask questions in a timely manner. I want to say to you, Mr. Garcia, thank you for coming to us tonight and being able to answer those specific questions and the details. We really appreciate the relationship that we've established. This is not an attaboy or a pat on the back. We take looking at finances and the district very seriously. And you're working with Alief, you understand that we've done that for years. We ask the tough questions. In addition to that, I like to add, whenever we have an audit meeting, we do still come in the public and discuss this even further. Even though we do have the audit meeting, there is another portion in which we discuss publicly each year that we go through this process. And I know as the board members continue on in their position as board, they will come to know that, as Mr. Moreno and I have had the opportunity to look at this for the last 13 years. But Mr. Garcia, thank you on behalf of the board for coming back to us and being able to supply that information. And I want to say thank you to Trustee for making sure that we have opportunity. We don't want to allow any misinformation to go out, especially if we are not clear. If we as board members are not clear, then we need to make sure that corrected. So if there's no other item on this, Mr. Garcia.
Ms. Williams, can I make one final comment on this? Just for a brief comment. Okay. I know we got lots still to cover, but I totally agree with you. You know, the years that we've had on the board, you know, it's not a matter of it is relationships. It is building that trust and work relationship with our vendors and our staff. It's not a matter of liking or, you know, liking certain personnel or whatever. It's a matter of trusting them and working with them and believing in what they do. You know, we have a great, strong financial department that reviews it, and we get notices at least weekly, sometimes twice a week. We get updates. We get things from Deanna and from Charles and you know, from Ms. Chang from before and everybody now, and even from HD Chambers in our board reports. So we get the notice, we get it. So it's not a matter of me just, you know, liking these staff members or whatever that was maybe stated at one time before, but this is a matter of us trusting them and believing in them and letting them do their job that they're hired for and allowing us to do our job that we are elected by the public for to do and work with this. So I just want to make that comment, and thank you, Mr. Garcia, for coming out and, you know, or staying at home wherever you are, and talking to us. So
thank you. Okay, board, at this time, we've already spent a great amount of time and effort on that particular item, and we will consider this as a closed item. There's no other comments or that have been requested at this time. So thank you, Mr. Garcia, for joining us, and we will release you. And board, we are going to now move to item number 8, which is discuss and consider the distribution of ESSER funds, ESSER 3 funds. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Chambers, are you going to introduce who will be speaking next, or is this Carla Kessler jumping?
Let me just give a 15-second overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kessler.
Okay, I'm going to time you on 15 seconds, Mr. Chambers.